All right, joining us on the Glue Guys is one of the brightest minds in
Oh boy.
basketball, Mo Dakhil, co-host of Nerder She Wrote on the Athletic NBA show. He also has a wonderful Twitch stream. Mo, how can people watch you? You talk about basketball all the time. How do people watch you on Twitch?
Just go to twitch.tv/modakil_NBA. My dog is jumped into my lap just now, and that happens on the Twitch stream as well. He likes to be involved in the action. So yeah, but you can go check it out there. It's pretty easy. Just follow me on Twitter. I always put the link up every time I go live.
It's really good. I mean, if you kind of feel like you're lacking in actual basketball breakdown, Mo gives you real basketball. Also, your Twitter is fantastic. So follow Mo on Twitter. It's at Mo Dakhil.
_NBA.
_NBA.
I try to keep it consistent across all lanes.
Thank you so much for being here. I put up the bat signal for you today because we got news officially that Kyrie Irving is preparing to have his return on Wednesday against the Pacers. A road game, which is, of course, it's only going to be road games from here on out. And I wanted to talk to you because, you know, we've had so much debate about vaccinations on the show and sort of the emotional impact of Kyrie. But we haven't really talked too much basketball because it hasn't felt like a real possibility that he was going to play. Now he's playing. And I think it presents an interesting question for the Nets. So I want to ask you straight out, how would you, if you were only getting Kyrie Irving in the circumstances that it was, where it's only road games, you have this weird season where a lot of guys are out for the COVID list, how would you kind of handle Kyrie's minutes and his return? Would you maximize him and play him with KD and Harden, or do you kind of split it up as if there was nothing strange about what's happened up leading to this point?
Yeah, first off, let's just start with, it's not an easy position to be in for Steve Nash, right? Like, this is one of those questions you probably have, thought about, overthought, then like, I'm not going to think about it for a while, then went back to thinking about it. Like, it's just everywhere. He woke up in the middle of the night, I'm sure, and going like, well, maybe if I did this, there's going to be a million second guessing. There's no right answer, right? Like, I think the starting point is, the most important thing is, this is his first game since the second round of the playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, it's been a long time. I didn't do enough. I didn't count all the days, but it's long. Let's just leave it at that. I don't think you can come out there and put him right away at like 37, 38 minutes in that sense. So I think for starters, you're going to just drip feed him, especially because it's this game and then they're home for a few days before the next road game and things like that. So I think what you do is you do put him in the starting lineup. I do think you try to maximize him with KD and Harden. Maybe you try to leave some minutes on the table in case this game is close and you could use him in crunch time. Because how many times have we seen games, just any team, guys are on a minutes restriction. They burn those minute restrictions in the first three quarters. It's a close game, and the coach is like, God, I really want to play this guy, but the team,
I always think of Zion Williamson. I feel like I remember early on. I mean, this has been so long ago that he was recovering from whatever he was recovering from before, where there was times when they couldn't have him out in the fourth quarter when they needed him.
Yeah, it's hard, so it's a hard thing. I think they're going to ease him in to this. I think, they have a long road trip coming here pretty soon. And I think that's going to be where you're really going to see them kind of fully maximize. I think right now it's almost like, I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like 2 preseason games, the first games that he's going to play, just because he needs to get back to being acclimated with the guys and things like that. But everybody should be excited. It is, forget all the off court stuff. Right. And however we feel about that, and I have a lot of opinions on that I try to keep to myself. But it's just fun to have Kyrie back on the basketball court because he's such a unique talent, and he gives the Nets such an extra oomph that you've watched a ton of them. I've watched a ton of them this year that we just feel like they're kind of missing, even though they're right there in the race for the top of the East. Still feels like they just need that last sort of punch that they haven't had.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you that. I mean, it seems like an obvious answer, but you think that the Nets, to increase their championship odds, and I don't know how much the increase is, let's say Kyrie's only a part-time player. How much of an impact do you think he adds to the chances that they could win a championship. Is it significant if he's only a part-time player? Or is it too tough to even tell right now because we didn't even see him play basketball?
I, I just the idea of Kyrie, I think it's a significant add. It'll help you. It just becomes really challenging, Mike, when you get to the playoffs, and what do you do? If
You're trying to get the 5 seed. You have to
right,
tank.
exactly, just constantly no game sevens at home.
No.
Like you fight all year to have home court advantage, and the Nets are like, no, we're gonna fight all year not to have home court advantage. Like it's just a challenging situation to be in, and so there are going to be a lot of unknowns, a lot of how is this going to work. I have my doubts because I think I'm a big believer in just how much chemistry means to the team, and playing with each other and going through battles and things like that with each other. Like he's never played with Patrick Mills. Patrick. I called him Patrick. Patty. I went to his official name. This is just my Australia days, I guess.
Did you
Patty?
You coach Patty, right?
Yeah, I was with him in Australia. So
yeah. So what's because some people I know a lot of people know you were a video coordinator with the Spurs and Clippers, but what was your Australia like? How much do you know Patty Mills in terms of him as a player, and how far back do you go with him?
Very, very well. I mean, I go back as far as 2010. And my first run with the Olympics or with the Australian team when we played in the World Championships. Patty's just an unbelievable human being. Forget about basketball, just an unbelievable human being. So go way back with him in that regard. I was part of the coaching staff, video coordinator, / assistant coach, mostly video coordinator though. But it was involved in practices, worked with him and the guards a lot. Brett Brown gave me a big leash during the training camps to really kind of play with those guys and coach a little bit. So I go way back with Patty, but back to the point though of Kyrie, he's never played with him. He hasn't played with Paul Millsap, with James Johnson. Like there's a chemistry thing, and you're only going to get part of that. They've played 34 games into the season, 35 it'll be game 36 when he plays,
right?
And so he's going to play maybe about half of those because of the home game stuff. And you're looking at it like, so he's only going to get 15 games, 16 games of building chemistry with those guys, and that matters come playoffs. It also might not matter at all, Mike, because they're just so supremely talented that it's just like, screw whatever the hell Mo said. We're just good basketball players, great basketball players. So it's just so up in the air.
Well, let me ask you this: there's 2 looming returns. Kyrie Irving as a part-time player, Klay Thompson as a full-time player. Which is more significant?
I think, God, they're both.
Is that tough?
So it is
because
tough.
Klay is. We have no clue how he looks. We have an idea of what part-time Kyrie is going to look because he's going to be fully healthy. He should come in with a lot of energy, but he's only a part-time player. Where Klay's full-time, but again, the injuries were just so devastating.
I'm almost going to push back saying Klay's full-time. Like you saw it with KD when he was coming back just from the Achilles injury, right? Like how many stretches did he have of consecutive games until towards the end of the season, where I think 7 or 8 consecutive regular season games, and then obviously the whole playoffs. But there was a lot of like, played 5 games, had to sit 3 games, played this many, played 3 games, and injuries kind of just happened with the Achilles. Klay's coming back from an Achilles and a torn ACL. Like, so, and I don't think the Warriors are going to play him, every game, right? They're going to give him days to rest and recover and things like that. They're going to go slow with him because the key is for them to just have him ready to go by the end of the season and into the playoffs where he can play every night. And I think, so calling Klay a full-time player is a little bit like, yeah, in theory, he's eligible to play every game, but I think he might even be a little bit of a part-time guy in that sense. But in terms of importance, man, it's a toss-up because I have my doubts about the Warriors. Them going to the finals improves obviously with Klay Thompson. I was in on the Nets even when I heard the news of Kyrie. Then we started watching him play, and I'm watching him now going like, okay, no, I was wrong. They need Kyrie also.
Yeah, they do.
And so it's like, okay, so it's almost like both of these teams' chances just goes up with those guys presence on the court. Forget about how well they're playing, their presence on the court. You're not leaving either of those guys open. That's kind of, it doesn't matter. Both guys can go 0 for 5 from 3. You're still going to contest the 6th shot, and all of those things. So I think it's almost equal level, but both very big for both those teams.
So, and we were talking about this a bit before. So if you were Nash, because if there were no part-time player, there was no odd vaccination issues, the way Nash had played those three, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie together, and we only saw, I think, 8 games of that last year anyways, so it's not like a great sample size, but it's a mix and match like every coach would. They all start the game. One of them comes out. The other two runs the bench units. And at times it'd even just be Harden out there with all bench players because Harden is the most sort of he's his own system to himself, right?
Right.
But do you, as Nash, try to line up all those 3 guys' minutes together just because they're not going to get a lot of time to play? They're just not until you need to kind of almost jumpstart that chemistry in a way, or do you have to? It's almost too much of a consideration to try to play the 3 stars together all the time, because that then completely messes with your bench units and all that stuff. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing people don't understand, it's not even those 3 guys that are affected. It's changing the roles of everybody on that roster, right? Like, the one thing I've known from my time with players is they just want to know what to expect, right? They want to know what their role is. I'm going to come in this time of the game. I'm usually getting out this time of the game. I'm going to get usually this many minutes. Now it's like, okay, road games is going to change. Home games is going to be different. And there's this whole weird flux about it, and in that. So it really affects everybody in that sense, like, what do you do with Patty Mills? Because you really can't play Patty Mills, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden all 3 at the same time. You can, but now your defense gets really interesting in that situation. So you're really kind of dealing with a lot of questions. And you know what? I won't be surprised if we see that lineup, but it's going to be
that's like a clutch line, the closing time. Hey, we want all shooters, but you can't play defense. Like, as you say,
that's the question, right? Like, okay, right. If we need to shoot our way back into a game, okay, we'll put those guys out there. If it's, or we need to lock down defensively, we're going to take Patty Mills out and put somebody in that can play defensively. So there's just a whole lot of stuff that goes into it. In terms for Nash, I think my focus would be, like, because they just only played 8 games together last season, I would say, hey, like, I need to get those 3 guys on the court together as much as I can. So I think I would try to pair that. I would try to keep that grouping together and figure out what other 2 guys I can play with those 3, throughout the season, so I can start getting that sort of rotation down for road games. It's just so weird, Mike. Every time I think about it, like, it's just like, man, like, this is going to get very weird. And this is a very, very tough coaching job.
Yeah. So there's some, you probably don't get this, but because I'm a part of Nets Twitter, like every fan base, there's people like to complain about the coach. It's just part of it's indoctrinated. With the moment we're born into a fan base's Twitter, you're going to complain about a coach. And there are complaints about Steve Nash, rotation issues or whatever. My thing is like, I don't think any coach in the NBA could have handled the sort of insanity that has surrounded this franchise better than Steve Nash has. Like, if you even look down south in Philly, Doc Rivers is like the archetypal, like, sort of like old sage coach, right? Like a wizard, like in terms of knowledge and wisdom. But it's been tough with Ben Simmons. Now, that situation, there's a more back and forth, between Daryl Morey and Clutch and stuff like that. So it's kind of harder for Doc Rivers to manage it. But Nash, you don't hear any of that with the Nets, really. Well, that stuff doesn't leak out. And I think that partly due to Nash's ability to sort of manage, just, sort of like defuse minor situations. It seems that way to me. I don't know what you think, though.
Yeah, first let's start with just Doc created this situation in the first place.
Yeah,
with the whole Ben Simmons thing, but that's a whole other podcast for a different fan base.
Sure.
But I just think when people really are kind of coming at Nash, I'm like, you're 100% right. No other coach could handle this. Doc couldn't handle this. This is a whole different scenario. And it took a guy like Steve Nash, who, has shown very eloquently like he can handle this and understands these guys to a degree, and has that level of like has their respect and is able to kind of respect them back in a way and really sort of keep that going. It's almost like a very empathetic. I hope that's the right word. English again is my first language and I still suck at it. But like just has that feel for these guys in a way that goes a long way. And I got to take a hit. I was against the Nash hiring when he first got hired.
I was like,
Mo.
I remember.
No. Oh, jeez, you're taking notes. But like, because I thought like exactly what you said. This is an incredibly tough job. This is a lot of personalities. I wasn't sure he could handle it, and I was wrong. And I watched it last season, going like, no, I was wrong. Like he's handled it gracefully, and it's to be honest, and I should have seen it because that's how he's handled everything with this, with his time as a player all the way through. So, Nets fans can complain all they want. Like, I don't think you're another coach, this thing's going to be a complete disaster.
He's the right coach for this job currently.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the difference. Let's do a couple quick ones because I know you got to get out of here. Last time we spoke about James Harden. Like he had a couple of good games. This was about a month ago. Harden's been playing better. It seems like he has more burst. What have you been seeing out of Harden? Because if anyone that has had more discussion about the Nets besides Kyrie, it's how's Harden look. So how do you think Harden has looked?
Yeah, he looks comfortable now. I think he looks a little bit better with the point of emphasis rules and the way the game's being officiated a little bit. He's still getting to the line a pretty good number of times on some nights, but he just looks more comfortable and more fluid. Like I'm pretty sure I said it on your show. I wasn't really that worried about Harden.
No, yeah.
I said, let's slow start. Fine. Like he'll get back. Like I wasn't concerned. He's too good of a player not to be James Harden again. Like everybody was panicking. And if this is the Harden you're going to get, like the Nets are screwed. I was like, I don't think this is the Harden you're going to get. It's November. It was December. We're now in January and you're beginning to see him kind of get going here a little bit. What you would like to see is them get some wins behind that. Dropping that game to Philly and then dropping that game to the Clippers are too bad. Philly's not a bad loss. The Clippers is a really bad loss. Really no bad. Paul George, no Marcus Morris. You had I think it was a 13-point lead midway through the fourth quarter, and you blow that. Like, and it's not the guys you think who are beating you. It's how many Nets fans knew who Amir Coffey was? It's those things that are like, what are you talking about? So he's looked better, but they need to start kind of scratching some wins together a little bit. Not because it's they're right there in the standings, like I said, top of the East, but they haven't had like a signature win. Like, what's their best win?
I mean, they have beaten Philly. They beat the Lakers, but the Lakers are
terrible. It's not a good win.
Bad at this point.
The Lakers are not a good win. They beat that. What was impressive about that win was they did it without KD. It was James Harden and the crew and things like that. So that's impressive. But also the Lakers are just a bad team right now. Yeah, and Philly's up and down, in the standings, so it's like, but they haven't beat the Bucks. They haven't beaten the Heat. They haven't beaten Chicago, like those teams in the East are the ones you're looking at going like, hey, like that, those are some good teams we got to beat.
Well, and this goes back to Kyrie, but like they have a game against the Bucks coming up on Friday. That's a huge game, obviously. But it's at home.
No Kyrie, what are you going to do?
So if they win it, it's great. Everyone says, wow, they beat the Bucks without Kyrie, but this team, it's just such an odd situation. One last question about Kyrie, and then we'll get out of here. Like, how is this going to work in the playoffs? We know playoff basketball is so different from regular season. Things get so intense in the playoffs. Every minute that a bench player is out there versus a starting lineup player typically is like a drastic turnaround in terms of point. How can this work that Kyrie, like, obviously a lot can change. New York City could decide by then to loosen things up, or Kyrie can actually make a bold decision to get vaccinated. I just can't, we have this conversation and I can't even begin to think about how in a playoff series the Nets are going to juggle like only getting 3 games maximum of Kyrie per series or 4 games maximum. It's just insane.
I mean, it's nuts. I don't have a feel for it. Like, it's really unprecedented in terms of the situation of we're only going to have this guy on the road, and in the playoffs, that's a massive disadvantage for the Nets. It's especially if they have home court advantage. You're going game 7 conference finals against whoever, the Milwaukee Bucks. You're going to want to have Kyrie there, but if it's in Brooklyn, he's not there unless, all the way things stand now. That's a massive blow.
It's a mental issue too, right? Because you mentally, it's like the home games, Harden and KD are going to have to press I mean, they're some of the greatest players of all time, so they're used to sort of the pressures. KD's a champion, but the mental aspect of like, I have to press more in this game because we don't have Kyrie. Then the road games, you get this boost. It's just the mental gymnastics is insane. That's going to be
exhausting. It's exhausting. And the playoffs are already tiring enough, are already stressful enough mentally. Like, it makes it really challenging in a way that, like, and hey, they might be so talented, those three, that they can overcome it, but it's hard, and it's not an easy way to just look at it. So I just think, man, it's going to be an extremely challenging situation for the Nets going forward. Now, as content creators, we love this. Right? Like, this is going to be a storyline the rest of the year. This is what it looks like when Kyrie's on the court. This is what it looks like when he's off the court. This is all the things that are going into it. None of us have an idea how this is going to play out.
Well, it's a great data set for how impactful is Kyrie Irving. Because I mean, there was that time when he was in Boston and he had an injury and the team's record improved greatly when he was out. And then there's always the discussion of like, our team's better off with Kyrie Irving. And it's like, well, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure a guy who's 35-5 shooting 40, 50, 40, 90 is impactful positively. But we're going to have a nice data set to know how much does Kyrie Irving help a team. I'm going to guess like a decent amount. That's my extrapolation, but I don't know.
And more importantly, if they struggle with Kyrie,
yes,
on the road, everybody's going to be, they should tell Kyrie to go away. Like, there's going to be all sorts of stuff that's going to come out of this. It's going to get really interesting and how, so this is just a fascinating case study.
You know that the Nets are going to be matched up against the Toronto Raptors in the first round because Kyrie cannot even cross the border. And that's just how karma works. And that's how it will work. They will play the Raptors and they may lose to the Raptors for now. But
I mean, but that's something they have to be thinking of.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too, as a teammate, you're looking at him going like, damn, dude, really? Like, you're James Harden trying to compete and get your first finals.
Yes.
Really? You're not going to really? Like, I got to go into Milwaukee game 7 conference finals, in Brooklyn, and you're not going to be there. I came to play with KD and you. Like, there's an element of that's really kind of going to be interesting how that plays in the locker room altogether. And again, no idea. I'm projecting here, guys, but it's like, we don't know anything. James might be like, no, we got this. We're good. But it's, I can understand it, because that'd be my mentality. It'd be like, damn, really? Well, like, I'd be frustrated.
And the thing of having now watching James Harden all the time, he's not afraid to voice his opinion at all.
No,
he's not. He's happy to tell players on the floor, yeah, you got to do better. Mo, I so appreciate you doing this. Mo Dakhil, check him out at Mo Dakhil_NBA on Twitter,
sir.
Twitch, everywhere else in the world. Also co-host Nerd As She Wrote. Mo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.